Hey, how you doing? My name is MK0, and I lack both Mode 7 graphics and blast processing. That's right, we're talking about video games today. Specifically, my history with video games. What I started with, some of my favorite games, some big gaming moments that stood out to me, and whatever else kind of comes up in the story. Alright, I've wasted enough time trying to make an intro for this. Let's get going to the good stuff. The first system I ever played was actually my dad's original Game Boy. Yes, yeah, you might be noticing a pattern if you listen to the History in Pro Wrestling one, because once again, my dad is the one who got me into this. He started playing, back when pinball was the big thing, and then he actually still has, an Atari 2600 that doesn't work anymore, and he had the original Game Boy, and that's what I started on. It was the original Game Boy. I remember vividly. He had a game called Battle Unit Zeoth, where you played as a robot mech, and it was a side-scrolling shooter. It was a lot of fun. I played through it about a dozen and a half times. Something that made those dozen and a half playthroughs a little bit easier was the Game Genie. Oh yes, you can imagine the original big brick of a Game Boy with another giant brick of a Game Genie on top of it. So big that it had a little storage compartment for the code book behind it. Yep, he had one of those. It was a lot of fun. Eventually, we ended up getting the family Super Nintendo, which I still have, and yes, it has yellowed. We got it very much at the tail end of the Super Nintendo's lifespan. I think the PlayStation was just around the corner. I apologize for not giving a lot of specific dates. This all sort of blends together, and I'm doing this as off the cuff as possible. But the first games we had were obviously Super Mario All-Stars and Zelda: Link to the Past, which, oddly enough, and I know this is going to be controversial, I'm not a huge Zelda fan, and I think trying to play Link to the Past at a young age with not a whole lot of video game experience might have contributed to that. Don't get me wrong, they're still great games, I'm not going to deny that. It's just, I'm not a big fan of them. That was the first home console that I played, was the Super Nintendo. And then eventually, I got my own Game Boy Pocket, and I got a PlayStation. Yes, the PlayStation 1. Oh, PlayStation 1 with Crash Bandicoot Warped and Spyro the Dragon and Mega Man 8 as the first games on it. Oh, I remember that birthday, Christmas. Oh my god. Good times. And yes, now I realize that Mega Man 8 was probably the worst starting point to get into the Mega Man series. And I'm going to move on quickly from that, because if I don't, I'm going to start ranting about Frostman's stage for far too long. But anyways, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon ended up becoming two of my favorite franchises early on. And that's also when we started getting Tekken. We got Tekken 2. And yeah, you'll notice we kind of jumped around a little bit with games. Again, we got the PlayStation a little bit later on in its lifespan, still well before the PS2 was on its way. But, again, Crash 3 was one of the first games I got. I ended up playing that series backwards, which I don't recommend doing, because 3 was fantastic, and then slowly losing features on each previous game was a weird way to experience them. And on that note, real quick, I don't want to hear anybody say that Insane Trilogy Crash 1 was worse than original Crash 1. Trust me, it wasn't. The lack of analog controls alone, it wasn't, but we'll leave it at that. So, early on, a lot of favorite franchises were established. Again, Crash and Spyro, and boy, what happened to them wasn't fun. Tekken, thankfully, still going strong. Mortal Kombat, I ended up playing Mortal Kombat 4 on that, and I had actually played some of the older ones in an arcade, because again, my dad grew up, with the rise of arcades. Eventually, we had one in our local mall, and he took me to it, and he was always better at arcade games than me. But again, I guess I got a little bit of taste of everything. We did have the Atari working for a little bit, and then it died, and then he tried to fix it, and that didn't work, so it's still there. Who knows, maybe one day. So we had the PlayStation 1, and then eventually I got the PlayStation 2. When that came out, almost at launch, we ended up getting it, which had Tekken Tag, That's one of the first games that came out for it, and one of the first games I had for it. And oh, again, great memories. I will say this was when I learned that buying a console at launch isn't usually the best idea. That PlayStation 2 did not last very long before I think it was the disk drive just completely went, and we ended up buying a replacement one. That one, the replacement one, lasted. And I think I ended up giving that one to my cousin when I got my backwards compatible PS3 later on. I'm getting ahead. PlayStation 2. So many good games on the PlayStation 2. Introduced me to what is still probably my favorite franchise in Ratchet and Clank. Those games have always been a huge blast for me. Every time a new one comes out, I'm super stoked. End up getting it when it comes out, end up loving it. For me, at least, that series hasn't had any missteps. Aside from Secret Agent Clank, that one, we don't really talk about Secret Agent Clank. But moving on from that, again, Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, Mortal Kombat, Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon. Yeah, I know some people look down on those, but they were a lot of fun. I know they don't really compare to the new ones now, but give them a shot. They were fun. And how could I forget Dynasty Warriors? Oh, I could tell that some people listening to this just had a huge flashback of playing Dynasty Warriors, mowing down about 1,000 troops, Lu Bu showing up and being an unbelievable pain in the ass to beat. God, I love hack and slash games like that. Oh, God of War, the original 2 God of Wars. Oh, they hold up amazingly well. I'll get into that in its own thing, but the newer ones haven't really done it for me, just because it's a huge departure from gameplay style. But that's for another time. Again, doing this off the cuff and from memory, I'm probably forgetting a few things. I'll have to go stare at my wall of games and it'll jog my memory. But those are a lot of the big standout ones, like the core memory ones. Also, around that time, the PSP came out. Love the PSP. Also had a lot of fun with that. It did take a long time to load, but still, PSP was a fantastic handheld. I remember actually using that portably, like on the go. I haven't done that with a lot of my portable systems, oddly enough. I kind of glossed over it, but yes, I had a Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advanced, the regular one where you couldn't see anything, and the SP that had the backlit screen, and you could actually enjoy your games. That was a worthwhile upgrade, to say the least. So naturally, coming from having a PS2, the next console I ended up getting was a PS3. Again, same thing. It was around, birthday, Christmas time. Got the PS3 60 gigabyte backwards compatible. Oh, you see those nowadays. Those are sought after. I wish I still had mine, but unfortunately, after many years of great service, the disk drive went, got that fixed, and then a year later, it cooked its own brains out. So I had to get it fixed just to get all the data off of it. And then I ended up getting a PS3 Slim, and my dad gave me his PS2 Slim that he wasn't really using that much. Luckily enough for me, my dad always played video games. He didn't just teach them to me and then fall out of it. He kept playing, and he kept up to it up till about the PS2 era on his own. But it was always nice. Always had him to play with. And my sister, she still plays, just not as much. So we always, the house was always full of people playing games. Even my mom, she played mostly like puzzle games, word search and hidden object and stuff, which, it still counts. She plays video games, still counts. So up until this point, I had only had one home console. I mean, I still kept all my old ones, but I always had like one console. It's one console guy up until this point. But this was also the time when the 360 came out, and I, was working and had disposable income, and it had a lot of good exclusives to it. Gears of War, Halo, the original Saints Row, which I played Saints Row 2, one of my favorite games of all time. Please just remaster Saints Row 2, add some more content and stuff. But please, who has a license now? Please. Anyway, so yeah, long story short, I ended up getting a Xbox 360 at this point. It was the mid-range original version of the console with the 60 gig hard drive, and just because I wanted to play these exclusive games, I was able to. And I also wanted to have original Xbox. I can't say Xbox One. That's a whole nother system. Original Xbox backwards compatibility, which that did not work out for me. I was able to get like the original Halo and Halo 2, but 360 backwards compatibility with the original Xbox was about 50% at the end of the console's lifespan. And of course, it was all the games that I picked weren't backwards compatible. So at one point at a game convention, I ended up buying an original Xbox. And the one thing I will say about the original Xbox is I really didn't like the controllers that it had, also because I was so used to having the 2 shoulder buttons and 2 triggers set up as opposed to just the 2 triggers that the original Xbox had. It had the extra black and white button on the face of it, so out of all of them I really enjoyed the Duke, the giant one, which works great for me because I also have giant hands. It's like they made it for me. But up until that, it was the Duke and that was it. Recently, though, Retro Fighters came out with a wireless Xbox controller, original Xbox, with the extra shoulder buttons. Godsend. I enjoy playing the original Xbox so much more because of that controller. So, once it was time for the next console generation to roll around, PlayStation 4, yep, that's the one I got, PlayStation 4. I wanted to wait on getting a PlayStation 4. I tried to hold out as long as I could, but then it was announced that Mortal Kombat X wasn't going to come out for PS3 and 360, so that kind of pushed me to pull the trigger a little bit sooner. I still have the OG PS4, still alive and kicking, new hard drive, new power supply. Oh yeah, I do my best to take care of my consoles. At this point, a lot of game discovery kind of blends together between consoles, because I still kept all of my old consoles. I still have all of my old consoles. I keep them running as best I can. So I've been discovering games across different generations at all sorts of different times. But PS4 was another console that had a big library of games that I really, really enjoyed. A standout was Dragon Ball Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2, a series that I have a love-hate relationship with. I'll go into that another time, but a fun game, a bit flawed. The second one fixed a lot of problems, but was still very flawed. But overall, I still enjoyed them. I enjoyed it more when I got it on PC, but I'll get to that later. Of course, new entries into Ratchet and Clank and Tekken and Mortal Kombat. This is my favorite lineup of Mortal Kombat games. X was really good. 11 I could go on and on about, so I'm not going to. We'll hold off on that. And just like last console generation, the Xbox One ended up having enough exclusives on there that when the Xbox One S came out, I ended up getting one of those with Dead Rising 3. And did I get Dead Rising 4? I think I got Dead Rising 4 as well. It was that far into the lifespan when the S came out, I think. And Gears of War with angry old man Marcus Phoenix, which that was a highlight of that game for me. Him and his tomatoes. Anyways, so again, multi-console person at this point. I was also around this time, I was still in the handhelds the entire time. Again, the running theme is exclusives. If I end up getting a system, it's because it has a bunch of exclusives, held as like a hostage. It's like a hostage situation. It's like, I really want to play those games. Well, you're gonna have to buy this console. All right, fine. So I ended up having the PS Vita, which underrated system, had a lot of good games on it. It just sucks that the general public and Sony kind of got into a standoff about the Vita, where Sony wasn't going to make any games for it until people bought more Vitas, and nobody was going to buy any more Vitas until Sony made more games for it. So the whole thing just sort of stopped dead in its tracks. This was also the time I ended up getting a 2DS. Yes, a 2DS, the original one that looked like a door wedge, because I wanted to play DS and 3DS games, and that was the cheapest option to get into it. I did later on upgrade to the new 3DS XL that looks like a Super Nintendo. Oh, I'll say this right now. I have a lot of console accessories that have the Super Nintendo motif to them. My Switch is actually decked out in custom Super Nintendo backplate and Joy-Cons. I love that design, and I'm a sucker for it. And then probably the biggest leap I've taken in gaming happened around this time as well. Again, because of exclusives and because of what you can do with the platform, I finally caved in and got a gaming laptop. Yeah, space constraints. So I ended up getting a gaming laptop. I ended up getting, at the time, the Cadillac of gaming laptops. One of the Alienware R417s, which to this day, still going. I've upgraded it. I've upgraded the RAM. I've replaced the battery. I've added more storage to it. I have no complaints with this thing because when I bought it, I told them, I said, I don't want to have to do this again for a long time. What's the best one that you got? This is at a time when I was able to do things like that. Not anymore. But things still going, and PC gaming has been a blast. Again, a lot of exclusives, a lot of stuff comes out on PC first. A lot of games get demos on PC that don't anywhere else, which I miss demos. Bring back demos and being able to mod. Like, that's sort of the fun. Again, I mentioned Xenoverse 2. I had way more fun with it on PC because I was able to mod it. Because a lot of those design choices, a lot of the bullshit difficulty spikes, a couple of mods here and there, and all of a sudden it's fun again. On a related note, I'll make a whole separate thing on this, but offline cheating in games, as long as you're not ruining anybody else's fun, do it. Gaming's all about having fun, first and foremost. And then I guess to wrap up the timeline of what I have, yes, I think about a year after launch, I was able to get a PlayStation 5 through one of the referral emails. Again, the main reason I wanted it was for the new Ratchet & Clank game, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm kind of getting games across the board. I mentioned that I have it, but I did get a Switch. Because, let's face it, everybody has a Switch. I didn't mention in the back, the family we had, back when I was living with my parents, we had a Wii. They still have the Wii. Why? Everybody had a Wii. Honestly, I don't even think I should have mentioned it, because if you would just assumed, this guy had a Wii at some point, you'd be right. I think you could say that about most families, and some of them might still have it buried away in a drawer somewhere. So yeah, not just in what systems I have, but as far as what games I enjoy, I'm kind of all over the place. I mentioned Mortal Kombat. I also really love Kirby. I also really enjoy Killzone. That was a lot of fun. Halo series is pretty good up until 4. 4 was the last one I really played, and I kind of haven't been interested since. What else? Gears of War. I mentioned Gears of War before. Mario, who doesn't love Mario? Mario Odyssey was fantastic. Mario Kart. Looking forward to the potential new one that might be coming out. That'd be cool. 8's been around for a while. Again, when Crash Bandicoot: The Insane Trilogy came out, that was absolutely amazing. Same with the Spyro Reignited trilogy. What's a few other? Again, I've been playing the Dynasty Warriors series. I got to play the new one. Origins actually looks really good, especially after how terrible 9 looked. I even got into the Empire's spin-offs of that, and a lot of the other anime spin-offs of that game series. Like, that's what I know most of Berserk is from. Berserk and the Band of the Hawk game on PS4, which a lot of fun, but man, that series, whew. I mentioned God of War. Again, up until the PS4 era God of War games, again, it was just such a departure from gameplay. It again didn't really, it's not for me. It's not for me. Not going to deny that they're fantastic games. It's just not for me. I mentioned, again, not being a big Zelda fan, but I have played both the Hyrule Warrior games. Those, again, love me a good hack and slash. I even have, I still have it, the PS2 Ghost Rider movie tie-in game that played like God of War, which I think I played that before God of War. So once I knew that that was good, it's like, hey, why don't you play the thing it was, ripping off? And yeah, big difference. I know I've mentioned Spyro and Crash a bunch of times. Yes, I even played the bad ones when the series fell off. Crash of the Titans was weird, but still ended up playing through it. Mind Over Mutant, not so much. The Spyro, The Legend of Spyro, that series. The less said about that, the better. Jak and Daxter, the series was a lot of fun. Then Combat Racing happened, and it was fine. And then they had that one PSP game, which, we don't talk about the Jak and Daxter PSP game. Not Daxter, the other one. I mean, at this point, I'm just kind of railing off games and game franchises. Maybe I'll just start doing that for a minute. Resistance, that entire series, great. Make more of those, please. I think I mentioned Killzone already. Tetris, who doesn't love a good round of Tetris? Puyo Puyo Tetris is a lot of fun too. Unless you're Tetris playing against someone playing Puyo Puyo, then you're at a heavy disadvantage, as I have learned. The Pokemon series started off at the beginning with Red and Blue, played Gold and Silver, fell off after that, and then came back during the 3DS era, mostly because of my wife. I ended up playing Omega Ruby, and then Sun and Ultra Moon. There's been so many of them. And the last one I played was Shield on the Switch, which was fun. I haven't really felt the urge to play any of the newer ones yet. Pokken Tournament, also fun. You can tell there are certain genres that I really enjoy. Fighting games is one of them. Beat 'em ups is one of them. So Streets of Rage, Final Fight, Turtles in Time. That was it, the Shredder's Revenge one that came out. It's fantastic. Give me any arcade beat 'em up and I will play it at least once. Light gun shooters. I love light gun shooters. Time Crisis, House of the Dead, any of them. Area 51, even the second one that wasn't that good. An arcade light gun shooter is one of the simplest pleasures in life. If you have the opportunity to, if you have like an arcade by you that does like pay by the hour, so all the machines are on free play any light gun game with both player 1 and player 2 guns. Just do it at least once. It's a blast. And funny thing, as much as I love fighting games, I've never been any good with like fight stick controls, arcade stick controls. I've always been more of a controller guy. I don't know what that makes me as far as fighting game fans are concerned, but yeah, I'm a controller guy. I'm not that good with a fight stick. When it comes to racing games, I'm more of a fan of the kart racer style games and the arcade style racers. So Mario Kart, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, fantastic upgrade to the original. Horizon Chase Turbo. There was an obscure PS4 game I played called Gear Shifters, which kind of played like Spy Hunter, only horizontal instead of vertical. I ended up platinuming that too. Just a weird game I just found at the local retro store on a budget, and it looked interesting enough, so I gave it a shot. I'm a sucker for any of that, just something that looks interesting and that's at a good price. You don't find that as often anymore, but it's how I discovered a lot of hidden gem games. It's also how I discovered Perfect Weapon, one of the single worst games to ever exist. And if there's one thing I want anybody to learn from this, it's that Perfect Weapon was the worst game. And if you see a copy, you should destroy it for the good of humanity. But you know what? At this point, I've just kind of rambled on about different games and series, and that kind of covers the history pretty well. I think that gives a good enough background as to where I come from for video games and why I might have certain opinions on certain games or certain trends in the gaming industry. Again, all stuff that I eventually want to get to in sort of their own single topic recordings. Let's call them that for now. So now that we're at the end of this, the comments are open. Anything that I talked about here that you want to hear me talk about more in specific, please let me know, and let me know what your history in gaming was. I genuinely want to know, like, where everybody's coming from, What did you start with? What was your first system? Some of your favorite games? Yeah, I think that about wraps up this one. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this. You take care.